We are on page 98. We are officially going to be starting the Amidah. Can I actually ask you to move the hot water so that, just so it's not blocking. Happy we have a full room, but yeah, just off, yeah. And if anyone wants, then they can go get tea and coffee. So last week, 2 weeks ago, we did the introduction to the Amidah. Quick recap, just so that we're all on the same page, and we'll go running from there. Is the Amidah is whenever we refer to tefillah, to actual prayer, it's always talking about this prayer. There are a few different sources that we learned that there is a commandment to pray. We're actually going to be talking about some of them tonight with the first blessing. Besides that, we talked about the 3 steps back, 3 steps forward. And there's another opinion, by the way, which is that the 3 steps back are just so that you can take the 3 steps forward, right? So it's a logistical thing. You need to take 3 steps forward to be able to approach in a prayer. But if you have a table in front of you or a stender or a chair in front of you, you wouldn't be able to take 3 steps forward. Therefore, you take 3 steps back, and then from there, you can take your 3 steps forward.
What's the alternative opinion?
So there's a question, there's in Hashem Sfatay Tiftach Ufi Agiti Letecha, it says you take 3 steps back, 3 steps forward. So all the different opinions that we talked about last time was we talked about taking back from a place of fear and humility and coming forward, or the different things in preparation of tefillah. And there was another opinion that I didn't have time to mention last time, which is that the entire purpose of the 3 steps back is to be able to take the 3 steps forward. So you have to take 3 steps forward because you are approaching God, right? But how are you going to do it? Well, I can't go forward if I'm standing in a row, so I would take 3 steps back to make room to take 3 steps forward. But if you are standing in a place that you do not have anything blocking in front of you, you would just take 3 steps forward according to that opinion. So it is something that it could be that you would come into account with, that you'll see that someone just goes and takes 3 steps forward. It happened to me last week. I was helping Arnold, who walked in right before the Amidah. I gave him his stender while I was saying while we were in Sur Israel. I gave him his stender, and then I just took 3 steps up, right? I didn't need to take 3 steps back because I had nothing in front of me. Okay, so that's just an important part of the introduction that we did last time. We also talked about the structure of all the Amidot, and that is that there's 3 blessings in the beginning, 3 blessings in the end, and blessings in the middle depending on the occasion. So every single day we have 13 blessings. On Shabbat we have 1, right? On holidays we have 1, and on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur there are 9, which means there's 3 in the middle as well. Okay. Besides that, there's all we will always refer to it as the Amidah as opposed to the Shmona Esrei. We talked about the source of it. Of standing together, that it comes from the angels, right? That we stand with our legs straight, that comes from the angels. And we talked about Chana and her silent prayer as a place of 2 separate things. One is that the prayer is said silently, and the second thing is that the prayer needs to come from the heart. Now, as it is something that is a lot to request from people, right? That our prayers will be always from the heart, right? The rabbis end up compiling what the prayer should sound like, right? In other words, we are mimicking what it's supposed to sound like. This is training yourself so that when once a year you have an inspiring prayer, if you're lucky, right? Because we're not always that in tune to it, and this is something that again, the Gemara says there are 3 sins that you do every single day. One of them is that we don't pray properly. The reason we don't pray properly is because we don't actually believe we're standing in front of God. Because if we believed we were standing in front of God, we would never ever miss up a prayer. But we don't. We stand, and we walk around, we talk, and we lose focus, and you're not standing as if you were standing in front of a king. You're standing as like you're reading something, right? So we're missing that. The one time a year that I would say a lot of people have more inspiration is Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur, right? Like right in the end, that's when you feel like the intensity and you go, oh, okay, now I'm going to read every single word. And because I know that my attention span is terrible, right? So there are several things that I do that I do for myself. Number one, I said this already in Psukei de Zimra, I don't try to focus throughout all Psukei de Zimra because I can't, right? Besides, my job, and I'm always like dealing with running things in the shul, right? I can't focus to save my life to begin with. So I have, my rabbi also took this approach that you're supposed to pick one, try to make sure that you're saying all of the words, besides Ashrei and the first one and the last one, right? Which are Baruch Shamar Nishtabach, those are the blessings. Same thing with the Amidah. You have to say all the words. But as far as focusing, try every week. We're going to be learning them, one or two of them at a time. It's going to take us a bit of time to get through the Amidah. So while we're going through the different blessings, try to focus on that blessing throughout the week. And then the next week, we're going to try to focus on the next one. Hopefully it gives us a little bit more inspiration, a little bit more of an understanding. And we'll talk about this as this does come up in a few other things in our lives with prayers and blessings, that you have an obligation to do certain things. And what happens if you can't focus throughout them all? Is there a shorter alternative that you should be doing, or where should you be focusing in different things? So that was, for example, with the Shema, if you said the first passage of the Shema, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, without focusing, right? And you have to repeat it, right? It's not true for the entire Shema, but that first passage, if you miss that first part, you would have to repeat it completely, because that is the mitzvah of Shema. Okay? That is so far what we talked about last week. Page 98, we're going to go through, I'm going to be reading the blessing, and then we'll do a bit of a translation and explanations into it. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim ve'Koneh Hakol, ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot, u'mevi Goel livnei benehem leman shmo be'ava. Melech Ozer u'Moshir u'Magen, Baruch ata Adonai Magen Avraham. First blessing, as you'll see, every one of the blessings has a title, right? It has a name. And the way that Chazal write down these blessings is it always will end with Baruch Atah Hashem, okay? That is the formula of a short blessing. This is the only one that also starts out with Baruch Atah Hashem, which is the formula for a long blessing. So even though this is by far not the longest blessing that we say in the Amidah, this is it is considered a long blessing, and it will follow usually the way that the title that Art Scroll or different Sidurim give it. It usually that is the meat of the blessing, right? The flesh of it. So let's start with a little bit of choreography. We have throughout the Amidah 3 things that happen that are visual, besides 4 things, right? Besides the words that we're saying. We have 2 bows that happen that are doubled, right? So 2 in the beginning in this blessing before and after, and 2 in Modim before and after. We have Slach Lanu, right? Where we clap on our chest, and we have Oseh Shalom, where we take the steps back. Now, how do we bow? How do we bow is a whole discussion in the Gemara on how low do you bow, how, are you bowing from your hips, are you bowing from your knees? And there are things that it makes a bit of a difference, considering that we do not bow properly today at all. Used to be, in the time pre-Gemara, the bowing was what was called Pisuk Yadayim V'Reglayim. which means you not like how the Muslims bow down on your knees with your hands front, but rather flat down on the floor, hands straight, feet straight. Now, this is something that hasn't been done for a very, very, very long time. However, now that Jews are going back up to Har HaBayit, to Temple Mount, this is only recently started that Jews are bowing down like this again at Temple Mount, and you have to go up and go to mikvah. It's not like so simple to just go up to Har HaBayit, but and men have to go to mikvah with all the same preparations that women have to do to go to mikvah. Right? You clean under your nails, you have to brush your hair, you have to floss, you have to make sure that you are completely clean before you go up to Har HaBayit. It is the only place that a man has to go to mikvah from the Torah, like how a woman goes to mikvah from the Torah for nidah. So if you were going up, and same for women who wanted to go up, right? Women typically don't go to mikvah before they get married. And you'll see that there's a very big custom amongst in our circles that women go up to Har HaBayit the day of their wedding, right? Because they'll go to mikvah, right? They'll go to mikvah, and then beforehand they'll be able to go up to Har HaBayit. And now there's a custom. The custom has been brought back to bow down like that. However, that is done only on Har HaBayit. The other time that we would do it is in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, right? On Yom Kippur, when we're doing a full bow to show what the bowing was at the temple. That's what we did on Yom Kippur, right? And we do it as flat as we could. Now, you can't usually do it as flat as you could in most shuls, right? And it just depends on how many people you have. This past year, I was standing on the stage explaining, right, the avoda as we were going through, so I had the entire stage to do a proper bow. But most of us end up doing the bows closer to what the Muslims do. So when they are writing the Siddur, or before the Siddur, when they're writing the Amidah, no one knows how to bow, because the only bowing that ever is done in Judaism was done flat on the floor completely. So they write it like this. They write that we bend at the knees, and we do it in this kind of manner. So we have basically in three different parts. We bow down for the first part of Baruch. You bow down with your knees. Baruch Atah Hashem. Okay, so our head is never facing down when we say God's name, right? And this is going to follow later on as well. So Baruch Atah Hashem in three parts. Same in the end. Baruch Atah Hashem. Later on, we're going to see that in Modim, the bowing, just so that we have this already now, is Modim. We don't bend our knees in the beginning. And there is a few words till we get to Hashem. Modim anachnu lach she'ata hu Hashem. Right? We got the 6 words beforehand. So for Modim, it's Modim, right? My knees are straight. Modim anachnu lach she'ata hu Hashem Elokeinu. We finish, and we go Baruch Atah Hashem in the end of Modim. Right, so for this is something that they're called. I'm trying to remember the words. It's hishtachavaya and kida. I don't know if there's a parallel in English, but it's the difference between bowing, a partial bow and a full bow. Right. So I have a friend who, for years, held by this opinion that we do not do this kind of bow while we're in Israel, now that we're back in Israel, and we must be doing full bows. So he would do a full bow in the Amidah, and he would say the blessing basically face down for those 2 blessings. I don't know other people who do it, and I don't know if he still does it, but that was what he did for a very long time.
Why do we bow only at those 4 instances and not every?
That's a great question. Okay, so this is what's called protocol, right? The protocol of how you approach a king is you don't bow down in the middle of every sentence, right? So you would bow right? If you were to go now to Buckingham Palace and meet the king, right? You would only bow when you meet and bow when you're leaving, right? So this is the first blessing and the one before the last. Sim shalom, we actually are taking steps back and leaving physically, right? So the question is, should it have been doubled up? We'll get to that more over there. But it's all about protocol, and we don't actually have real kings and queens anymore, right? Like we have kings that are figureheads, right? You have presidents that are figureheads. Like there's no better proof than you can have a reporter arguing with the president of any country, right? And asking them questions and saying, no, wait till I finish my question. Right? You go, no, if you said that to a king, you lose your head, right? Like we don't have kings and queens anymore. We have people who remind us that there used to be an age like that, right? But there was very, very, very strict protocol. And when you walked in, you were shaking because it wasn't clear to you that you got to walk out afterwards, right? That's what a king is.
Is there opinions that hold that you should bow at every blessing?
No. So you'll see that there's the shackle, right?
Yeah.
People shackle while they're praying. And before each one of the bows, you actually need to stop shuckling so that it isn't confused as a shackle. It needs to be a bow, right? So you'll see that it's very common that people, while they're davening, they shackle, but then right before they get to modin, they stop and bow, and then don't shackle throughout the blessing that you're going to bow again because it's too close to the bow. So there are no opinions of bowing down in each one.
Why do people bow for modim and then stay standing for the rest of the Amidah and some people don't? Is there a reason?
Are you saying in the repetition?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we get to that, we're going to talk a lot about the repetition because there's the parallel over there, and it's slightly community-based, okay? Slightly, not completely.
If you had, for example, had bad knees and couldn't do the knee bend,
then you don't do it.
Do you not do it at all, or do you just do the hip bow?
You do the head bow, okay? So there's a rule that basically there's always the proper way of doing things, and if you can't, you don't, right? But you would do as much as you could. So for example, you need to stand for the Amidah, right? It's called the Amidah, the standing, right? Now, you're in a situation that you can't. You are driving and you cannot physically stop. There's no shoulder, no place for you to stop, and it's about to be Shkia, you're going to miss Mincha, you need to daven while driving, right? So you're driving, you're driving, you cannot stand up. You're on a plane, you're in a situation that you can't stand up. You're on a rocky raft, right, that if you stand up, it's going to flip over, and you won't have the time to daven later. You daven sitting down. What do you do? So this has happened to me a lot, that I've been in situations where I had no option but to daven sitting down. So what do? You put your feet together, right? And you say, I can't stand up, I'm going to daven like this. The Mishnah says that you need to always face towards Yerushalayim. Always. Now, sometimes you don't know where Yerushalayim is. So it says like this. If you are anywhere in the world, face towards Yerushalayim. If you're in Yerushalayim, you face towards the Kotel, or the Makom HaMikdash, where the temple was, right? If you are on top of the temple, by the way, if you're at the Kotel, you face to the left corner, okay? Not towards the Kotel, you face towards the left corner, as that's the place that faces the where the Mikdash was, right? Or where the Kodesh Kodeshim was. If you are on top of the mountain, right, you face to where the Holy of Holies was. If you are in the temple, you face towards the Holies of Holies, right? And the Kohen Gadol, when he's in the Holy of Holies, he faces towards the middle of the Aron Habrit. And if you don't know which way Yerushalayim is, or you are in something that is moving, right? So you're on a road and it keeps on moving. You can't keep on adjusting yourself. It says, point your heart towards Yerushalayim, right? Which means have in mind that your prayers should go in the right direction. So while there is clearly a preference, right, for, by the way, that our Aron Kodesh in the shul now should be facing a bit of a different direction. Okay, there is a clear preference for it. It just physically doesn't fit, Okay, so between where it was and where it is actually where Yerushalayim is, right? Where should the Aron Kodesh ideally have been placed? The best place that we were able to get with a compass was the back left corner of the women's section, right? But if you put it over there, it's I don't remember the ceiling wasn't too low. It ends up being that the shape of the shul, we wouldn't be able to fit people in, right? So we said, okay, we're going to put it in a way that it is still facing Jerusalem, right? And we face towards that general direction, right? Is it ideal? It's not ideal, right? But you make do with what you can. So in every situation, when we'll build the next shul, we'll design it in the right. We'll design it in the right way. Okay, but that's that's the answer. The answer is you do the best that you could, right? You can't stand for everything in davening because you have real pain. You don't stand for everything, right? That is the answer. Okay, so we start out with bless you Hashem, our God and the God of our fathers, the God of Avraham, the God of Yitzchak, and the God of Yaakov. The God, the great and brave and awesome God, El Elyon. Okay, I am repeating that one in Hebrew, and we'll get into it in a moment. El Elyon, the God of the supreme God, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, who bestows a charity, good blissfulness and kindness. V'koneh hakol, and buys everything, or owns everything, or redeems everything. V'zocher chasdei avot, and he remembers the charity and the kindness of our forefathers. Umevi goel livnei benehem leman shmo be'ava, and he brings a redeemer for their children's children, for us, for his name's sake, with love. Melech ozer u'mashiach again. The king that helps and protects and is our shield. Baruch atah Hashem, bless you Hashem, Magen Avraham, the shield of Avraham. So there are quite a few things here. Oh, and there's the gray box in between. The gray box we say on between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which is Zochrenu l'chaim, remember us for life. Melech hafetz b'chaim, the king who would like there to be life. V'kotvenu b'sefer chaim, and write us in the book of life. Lemancha Elohim chaim, for your sake, living God. Right. So this is that God doesn't want the wicked to die; He wants the wicked to redeem himself. So we have over here quite a few interesting things about this blessing. Well, what things popped out at you? Well, what have you noticed in this blessing that is worthwhile questioning? Moshe's not in it. Okay, interesting. So it's focusing on three specific characters. What is interesting about the way that it's written?
It's like a third person saying it, like where it says, I'm looking at the English one.
Yeah, look at an English one.
You're talking about the first paragraph,
I'm
right?
talking about the whole thing. You pick anything that pops out at you that you
the way
find.
it says, who recalls the kindnesses of the patriarchs? It's like, stays, like it's saying it in a third person.
Yeah, that is actually just, that is proper. I'm saying that's just proper decorum.
Like the capital W.
Yeah.
For God.
Yeah. So whenever
Like him with a capital H.
Correct. So proper decorum of speaking to a superior is speaking in third person always.
Okay.
Right. Very, very common in religious circles is you refer to your teacher, to your rabbi, to your parents always in third person. And definitely to a king or to God, you would refer to in third person.
But contrary to that, the very first words are not in third person. Blessed are you is much more familiar than.
Yeah.
Well, how would you say blessed is he?
There's a perspective shift there between.
Well,
blessed are you and the rest of
everything
it.
we end up saying. That's interesting. I take it back. It's interesting because you're right. Because the rest of them is in the first person, like it is more direct. That is interesting. I
don't know
take it
what
back.
how to say that in English, but like the little stars.
Yeah.
After, what's that?
Asterisks, yeah.
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 Blessed are you, and then you have another one after creates everything.
What
are
are just
those?
footnotes?
I
Oh,
think
are
those
they?
are. Yeah, I think
Oh,
those are just
okay.
footnotes.
Thank
But look at how it's referring to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. That's something that popped out on me.
Why is it separate?
Why is it separate?
Like it's
Oh, I know
his God
why.
and his God and his God, not like the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? So we are so careful to avoid this kind of thing everywhere else to make sure that there is never a perception of duality, right? And we always would try to avoid this in text. And yet this is a very strange kind of case where it does come and present it in this kind of text where it is like, there's the God of Avram, there's the God of Yitzchak, there's the God of Yaakov, right? We talked about this on Sukkot, about the different Avot and their different journeys. But something that I was reading about this was that there's a few different ways of looking at this. One is every generation that stays in the path of God calls God our God, right? And that is something to be said about the relationship that we have with God, and that in every generation we get to say, right, you are the God of Avram, you're the God of Yitzchak. It didn't stop, and it continues. You are the God of Yaakov, right, and it continues till us to this day. Someone said this. I remember it was one of my rabbis in high school who this very much stuck with me. Who said, in every generation, we look at ourselves and we say we are the worst generation that has ever been. We are the generation that doesn't deserve redeeming because of how far we've gone from God. And in every generation, God looks and says, right, look, the nation is still connected, even with all of their challenges, right? This is the generation that deserves to be redeemed, right? So in each generation, there is that kind of perspective of we are choosing God again and God is choosing us again, right? And in that kind of connection. But for me, the last part about the three aspects of them are understanding that God is coming and speaking to us, or we are speaking to God from very different perspectives, and meaning that you can have very different relationships as an individual with God. Yeah. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did not have the same relationship with God, right? And we refer to them as three of the greatest fathers of the nation, right? And each one of them had a different mission, right? Avraham is going, and he's a trailblazer. No one before him is attempting something as gutsy as this, right? It is standing up against the world and saying there's one God.
His dad even.
His dad is an idol seller, right? Like it's the Midrash talks about that he gets thrown into the fire for this, right? Like there's non-stop stories about Avram standing and fighting against the world. When, if you look in the Torah, there is zero proof that Avram had proof, right, to go up and stand against the world. Only at 75 God reveals himself to Avram in the Torah and says, Lech Lecha, which means up until that point, Avraham is going as the crazy person in town, telling everyone, everything you believe is wrong, there is only one God. And they say, where is he? Right? Like, give us proof. And God doesn't talk to him, right? Only in the Midrash is there any interaction between God and Avraham. But Avraham says, I believe. At 75, God says, get up and go, right? That's where a lot of the Midrashim come from. It's why would Avraham get up and go if he just heard a voice? Clearly he had a relationship with God beforehand. But according to the Torah, he doesn't, right? So Avraham is standing up and fighting against the world. He has belief beyond any doubt, right? He has his first child at 88 years old. He has Yitzchak at 100, right? This is not an easy kind of life. You promise me that I will be the father of the nation, right? And then you don't give me kids until I'm 100, right? Like there's a problem over here that Avraham really does struggle with. And yet Avraham's personality, we refer to him as chesed. Chesed is charity, right? So we talk about Avraham as chesed, Yitzchak as gvura being bravery or brazenry, and Yaakov is emet, truth. So we're starting with Avram. Avram has a rough kind of start, but his job is, in a way, to missionize the world. God wants him not to. There's a constant argument in the psukim between God and Avraham. And basically, the entire time, Avraham tries to create a monotheistic cosmopolitical religion. He wants to create, in a way, the only religion that does that is Islam, right? So he tried to create Islam in a less violent way. And he ends up getting Hashem keeps on stopping him and blocking him and sending him away. And it's over and over in the psukim. It says that he brings his students and God tells him, no, I'm giving it to your children. And he leaves the students and he continues by himself. And then he goes to the Plishtim and he tries to missionize them over there. And God says, I will give the land to your children. So he leaves and he goes to Egypt. And there's this argument, constant argument. Avraham is trying all of this because Avraham has a deep belief that the charity needs to be done with the world. This, you want to use the word tikkun olam, right? To do it, it is, we need to go around and bring the good message to the world. But that doesn't necessarily mean, it isn't necessarily what Hashem wants at that stage from Avraham. He gives him Yitzchak. Yitzchak has no stories about him. Avram has like 4 parshas about him. Yaakov has 4 parshas. Yitzchak has 1 parsha. It's not about him. It's about his mother dying. He is being brought as an offering that he is passive in. He has no stories whatsoever. He is the least, right? Like the least of all the patriarchs. We know nothing about him. Okay, and his entire story is called gvura. That bravery or the brazenness is understanding that it's not about you. Okay? Yitzchak is there to be a pillar and stand and basically keep that path going. Avraham started something amazing. Yitzchak did not, I'm going to say things that it's not a completely fair thing to say for Yitzchak. But Yitzchak doesn't live up to Avram's expectations. Avraham wants Ishmael over and over and over again. He tries to raise Ishmael as the heir. Okay? Hashem forces Avraham to pick Yitzchak. They interact all in all in one pasuk that Yitzchak asks him, where's the offering? And Avram says, you're the offering. And that's it. That is the only sentence that the Torah ever mentions that they say to each other. Okay? There is no, right, like finding a wife, Avram doesn't talk to Yitzchak about it, right? Like there is nothing in interactions because they are polar opposites in personality. Avram believes in charity, Yitzchak believes in justice. The justice or the law that Yitzchak believes in means that if you are sick and you went to Avraham and you say, pray for me, I'm sick, he would pray for you. If you go to Yitzchak and you say, I'm sick, pray for me, he says, if you're sick, you deserve it, right? Like, clearly there's a reason that you are suffering, right? Yitzchak has an understanding of there's justice in the world and things happen for a reason, and don't try to change it. Avraham prays for Sodom, the wickedest place in the world, because you must fight the injustice in a way that God is creating with charity, right? they cannot agree on a single thing, right? So Yitzchak ends up having very little that we learn from the Torah. However, the Zohar says that eventually, when Mashiach comes, we won't be known as Am Yisrael, and we won't be known as Am Avraham, we'll be known as Am Yitzchak, the nation of Yitzchak. Something about Yitzchak is very, very mysterious to us, and it's very much not about Yitzchak. So we can find time to do a proper class on the Avot, but there's an understanding that we do not understand from the Torah who Yitzchak was, and that's an important thing to know. Then, the other part that's important to know about Yitzchak is only there to hand over from Avraham to Yaakov, and Yaakov, as a combination of Avram and Yitzchak, can birth the nation. Okay? So what does that mean? That means that you aren't always the main character in your own story. We always think we are, right? And today, in the modern way of talking, people are always focusing only from the egocentrical point of view. But what if you are not the main character, right? For example, Esther's parents, right, grew up thinking that they were the main character. They die before she's born, right? Before she grows up, right? She's an orphan. Her uncle raises her. Her parents, who were they? What did they do, right? And we have a lot of these types of people that in Tanakh, that some of them don't even get a name. For example, Shimshon's mother, right, that we read about last week, doesn't get a name, right? And there's a question, right? Like, well, what was the purpose? The purpose is to raise this kid so that this kid can go and be a leader, right? And if you, right, like in our own narrative, we're very, very important, and we should be. But if we're brave enough to zoom out and look at the chain of history, are we the most important link in the chain? Sometimes it's really important to know that we are just that link in the chain, and that our job is to hold that link for the next generation. And it's not something that is easily acceptable, right? And this is what Chazal say, you need to have two metaphorical pockets, right? In one pocket, Anochi afar va'efer, I am nothing but dust, right? I'm nothing but dust means I'm a link in a chain, and I hold it together for someone else, right? And on the other pocket is B'shvili nivra olam. The world was created for me, right? I am that link in the chain, right? And you live with that balance of humility and purpose all the time, okay? And right now we have finally gotten to a generation where everybody is convinced that they should only have one pocket, right? And that pocket should only say, the world has been created just for me, right? We have finally reached a stage of humanity that narcissism is running the world, right? But we're missing, what does it mean to look for the future? And that is a very big thing that, right? And obviously not speaking about any specific case, but there is a tremendous amount of divorce that happens in the world today. And when you talk and look at the research of causes for divorce, right? Obviously there are divorces that need to happen, right? Real bad marriages, abuse, things that are unhealthy. But one of the leading causes of divorce is, I fell out of love. And you go, okay, but what about the rest, right? What about the children? What about, right? It's like, it's not always just about you. Now, it's not that there isn't a value for the love, and it isn't that there isn't a value to be in a healthy relationship, right? But we've gotten to a place that people are so comfortable just letting go very, very easily because this isn't what it used to be. And I'm not feeling it anymore. You go, okay, I'm sorry for your feelings, right? But there's children, right? are you making sure that that's their path, right? So obviously every case is different, and not speaking about anyone specific or anyone, right? I don't know people's stories, but I do, but that is a very important thing that has only started in this generation to that level. Yes, Lenny.
I'd like to build up on that because
Yeah.
I just heard another class today that was talking just about that, but in a bit of a different angle when we're talking about being the main character. And there's something about being in a relationship that you have a fantasy. You say, oh, every Friday before Shabbat he's gonna give me flowers, and I wake up in the morning, he's gonna make my coffee, and he's gonna be this and this and this and that, and all of this, like how he's gonna take care of me. But when I'm coming into the relationship, everything that is focused on me is a fantasy that I want to have happen, but I've never gone into a relationship when I said, I'm gonna cherish him and I'm gonna do this to him and this to him and this to him, because I'm thinking always about what I'm getting out of it. And one of the good things that we can do with any relationship we have in our lives, not just a romantic one, I think, is to look at what can I bring into this, and then once you bring something in, you can always reset it back. And they give a beautiful analogy about you made yourself a hot tub, right? You put hot water, and it's warm and it's nice and you're in there. And then your partner comes in and pours in a cold glass of water. So you wouldn't say, oh, I'm gonna add some cold water myself because he did it and we're gonna keep on with this bottle and doing the same thing to each other. No, I want the water to be warm, so I'm gonna add the warm water so it will be nice for both of us. So I think, yeah, it connected to me, so I just wanted to.
Well, like it said, as I'm probably the oldest person here, the most ancient person here, don't all agree at once.
The wisest person.
Yeah,
I
the
would
wisest.
say that these last 2 or 3 generations we have been described, and certainly by a number of American writers, as being the me generation, as the I generation. And I wanted to ask you, in relation to that, you talked about divorces that happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Are there any figures on the numbers of the increase of Jewish divorces?
I know that there's been increases. I don't know to tell you numbers, but I have seen it around us, right? Like you see it in communities that there's an increase of divorces, and it wasn't as legitimate to get divorced a generation or two ago, right? So now it has become more legitimate, which means some bad marriages that were bad for a very long time and should have ended a long time or never should have happened to begin with, right? It's good that now people can actually feel a legitimate reason to get divorced, right? But more often than not, there's a lot of divorce that's happening now that is about, my comfort and where am I feeling, and people also just give up on actually working on the relationship when getting divorced is that easy, right? So it isn't supposed to be easy in Judaism to get divorced, right? It should be a process, right? And that's part of the whole concept of going through the beitin and the get, and a proper beitin's response to we want to get divorced is go to marriage counseling for 6 months beforehand and come and talk to me then, right? Like a lot of beitins refuse to allow divorce right away unless there is immediate abuse, right? If there was something that there is a reason to basically force a divorce right away, a lot of beitins, their approach is go to marriage counseling, come back, right? And we want a report from the marriage counselor, right? Like we want, right? Like this is a court-appointed marriage counseling. Otherwise, you can't. We're not allowing, and it's to cause to try to save the marriage, especially if there's kids. If there aren't kids, there's a lot less less on the line in that matter.
But surely for like religious Jews versus secular Jews, the ones that obviously like keep the laws of Nida, surely that
It definitely
helps
helps
marriages,
It 100% helps. If you're following Nida, the laws of Nida, it helps because it helps build up 2 things. One, intimacy, and not losing that aspect of the spark, right? And the second thing is it helps actually build communication, because 2 weeks out of the month, right?
No, the
Right.
best you can do is talk.
You need to learn
No,
how
well,
to talk.
it's like also figuring out that you're like an individual person, because I feel like a big issue is women end up being like enmeshed to the point where like they're not themselves. They are this person's wife or this person's mom, and they have nothing except for that. And so it's like,
Yeah.
individual for 2 weeks.
Look, there's a lot of things that it's important to know in like in marriage counseling, as far as, you know, like the Venn diagram kind of for your life, right? Like where's me, where's you, where's the right? Like those things are important. I think that one of the is if you come back frustrated from a hard day and you get a hug, it releases endorphins and you calm down, right? Like it already calms you down, right? And if you can't get that from physical touch, and you need to do it through talking, it builds skills that people do not have unless forced to do so, right? If you're in a why do long distance relationships fail, right? Long distance relationships fail because it's all talk, right? So you don't ever have that. This is called a relationship of fire and a relationship of water, right? There's the steadiness of the water and there's the passion of the fire, right? And it doesn't exist anywhere outside of basically a religious couple and understanding nida, right? Because then you get both of them. Besides that, trying to create a relationship of water and fire is impossible, right? Which is why a lot of marriage counselors, sex therapists, right, talk about it. They say, you know, if you're having trouble, take a week that basically you are not intimate by definition, right? And that you are forced to talk as opposed to solve things in unverbal ways, right? Like, so it does give you tools. I think that yes, that we're still a lower percentage of religious divorces than non-religious divorces, but now that divorce is a fashion, right? Then it's acceptable, right? It's acceptable to switch spouses like you switch socks, right? Like, you don't need to give it much thought. So people do, right? So people just go through it and go, hey, this isn't working for me. I'm not, I thought I'd be happier. I thought I'd get this. I thought I'd get that, right? But people give up before it starts. And it's a problem. It's a very big problem. So where are we at? We're at Yitzchak.
Back the Amidah.
We're at Yitzchak, okay? So Yitzchak teaches us that you are a link in a chain, okay? And to be steady even when things are different, even when things are, I would say, unexciting, uneventful. Yaakov, out of all three of them, is considered to have the hardest life. His entire life is one tragedy after the next. His father doesn't love him. He steals the blessing, right? He needs to escape his brother who tries to kill him. He goes to his uncle's house. He marries his cousins, right? Very common, right? That's not a problem, right? But he marries his... It's a problem now. It wasn't a problem back then, okay? Just feel like this may get clipped, right? So he marries his cousins, and his new father-in-law, right, cheats him out several times. Gives him the wrong wife, then changes his salary multiple times. First doesn't pay him, then when he pays him, he keeps on changing his salary over and over and over again. He finally escapes, gets chased down. His favorite wife dies, right? He meets... you can. If you have more than one, you have a favorite. Okay. Same with children.
I was about to say that.
I was going to say your parents lied to you. There is a favorite. Okay.
Now the perfect way to do that is to just each one of your parents' favorite, and it'll kind of.
Well, that only works if there's two.
There's three.
I'm one of two. I'm saying I can speak.
We're
to.
8. I know where I'm at. It's all good. So it's okay.
Why do you think it was a bad one?
These are, I know where I'm at.
No, there's a few that are really sweet. So they get like automatic, There's a wall for one of my brothers in the house. He just got pictures of him from when he's a baby. We know where we stand in the house. And I have one sister. We really know where we each are. We can't figure out past number 2, right? We can't figure out where we're at, but number of 1s and 2, you kind of figure. I'm fine.
You can read it after.
Yeah, it's all good.
You want to talk about it?
We went from marriage
Really?
Yeah, that's gonna get clear.
Okay, so,
Marriage counseling, what about family therapy?
We're doing it all tonight.
but yeah, so favorite wife, right? His favorite wife dies. Then he has his favorite son, who the rest of the children try to kill. They sell him. He doesn't know that he's sold. He thinks that he's lost his favorite son for 20 years. He doesn't see him. He comes down to Egypt. Paro asks him, he says, "How was your life?" He says, "It was miserable," right? He says it. He says, "How long was your life?" He says, "My life was miserable." And Paro said, "That wasn't what I asked," right? He asked, "How old are you?" And he says, "I've lived shorter than my forefathers, and it's been miserable," right? And there's an understanding, very Jewish, right? It's like, I think we have more words for kvetching than any other language, right? But but Yaakov's challenge, out of everything, the attribute that is given to Yaakov is emet, it's truth. Yaakov has a tremendous challenge that he needs to face his entire life, which is dealing with the truth. He lies and steals, and they lie and steal from him, right? Him and his father, his children to him and his father-in-law, it's nonstop. And it's a challenge because it is just like Abraham's challenge is to bring an offering of his son, right? Why is it not Yitzchak's challenge? Because Avram, it's against his nature to sacrifice his son. Yitzchak says everything gets sacrificed. Animals get sacrificed, plants get sacrificed. On the altar, you can bring water, you can bring wine, right? Even things that aren't living get sacrificed. So why not people? If God says He wants me as an offering, that's what you do, right? Chazal argue and they say it was probably a bigger challenge for Yitzchak to get off the altar than to get on it, because being told you're going for an offering makes sense, and being told to do something. Now I'm being told that I'm not an offering. What's wrong with me that I'm not worthy, right? There's an argument that Yitzchak brings over there according to Chazal, right? But there's that understanding of three wildly different personalities that end up forming the nation. And you would say, well, how can one God fill that place for the three of them, right? In that kind of way. So when we're starting out, first of all, the entire blessing is the blessing of the Avot. With what right am I coming to pray? And this is something that very much comes up in every book that talks about what's called Iyun Tefillah, which is what we're doing now. Iyun means to learn and to get into the depths of the Tefillah. With what right am I allowed to approach God and talk? We said this in the first class. The only people who prayed are prophets. It's only people who are so close to God. I'm not a prophet. With what right do I get to come? Rav Nachman from Breslov says you need to come from a place of, I did a mitzvah this morning. Which means before you come to shul, you have to do a mitzvah. And with that mitzvah, I am coming to daven to Hashem. So you take the bus, you give tzedakah, right? Like you see a homeless person on the road, you give him tzedakah. You say with the zchut of the tzedakah, right? You got on the bus, you helped someone on, right, that was having a hard time, right? You had v'hadarta pnei zaken, right, and respect your elders. You did something that you can come to God and say, look, I'm not perfect, but I'm coming from a good place, right? And there's that approach. The other approach, which is a very common approach that you see in these types of books, is I can only approach God from this blessing. I could not start davening unless I had this blessing. Because this blessing is saying, you are the God of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. You had a relationship with each of them. Each one had a different relationship with you. They are wildly different personalities and wildly different journeys, right? We are here to continue that relationship with you. But as I am, the words that we use a lot on Yom Kippur is, I am poor and without points for myself, right? I don't have enough merit on my own.
Yeah.
But with the merit of our fathers, that you had a relationship and deemed that the relationship was worth continuing for those generations, continue it with us, right? And what does it say? V'zocher chasdei avot. And you remember that charity of our fathers, the good deeds, the merit of what they did, right? Because of that, umevi goel, and you bring the Redeemer, livnei benehem, to their children's children, right? It isn't that you brought the Redeemer you brought Moshe and took us out of Egypt, right? And you are bringing the Redeemer. In every generation, there's a Redeemer. In every generation, there's someone. Well, if you look through the book of Shoftim, I think it emphasizes it really, really well. And if the Tanakh continued being written until today, I think there would be a lot that we would have learned of history from let's call it a prophet perspective, right? Because in the time of the judges, I'm willing to bet not a single person saw it as, oh, there's a judge and they're redeeming us, right? But the pattern is very simple and you have to be kind of stupid to miss it. But in that generation, they all missed it because you can only see it if you zoom out, right? So here's the pattern. Am Yisrael misbehaves, worships idols, goes and leaves God behind. God sends one of the nations around to attack. We cry out to God. God says, this person is the judge, the prophet, your leader. This person leads the nation into battle and leads the nation and basically ends up being the leader after that as well. And then everything is good for 10, 20, 30 years. A generation switches and we fall back on the same pattern, right? And then the nations attack us and then we cry out to God and it goes over and over and over again. And I'm willing to bet that if the Tanakh was being written today, then then you would be able to point out and say, there was a prophet that was there, right? That really led the nation. He was a secular prophet, right? But his name was Herzl, right? And he had, and he came in a time of real need, and God sent him as a messenger. And there was this other one. It was, Rav Kook. And it was, in every generation you can find someone that will drastically shift history, right? Sometimes you can see it. Sometimes it takes generations until it's clear, right? But when you zoom out all of these things, 100%. 100%. I'm not going to say it in a recording because I'm not ready to get canceled tonight. Right? But I'll say it anyway. Right? When people will zoom out in history, right, they'll see that Trump is one of these people, right? And he's got good qualities, he's got bad qualities, he's got everything because he's human, right? But when you zoom out in history, there will be no one who has managed to have such a big impact, right, on the region as he has, right? Yeah.
He just cracks me up, man.
After the recording. Okay, so, can't get in trouble with the board again.
Thank you. Operative word.
I don't remember what it was last time.
I do.
Okay. Very nice. All right, so
we're gonna get it.
Here's my question.
Yes.
And you're going to laugh at it. But when we make, basically plays to lineage and things like the Amidah, why is it that we only make plays to you are, the God of our fathers? Why is it, particularly because Judaism is a matrilineal religion, why do we kind of ignore matriarchs in that way?
So first of all, it didn't become a matriarchal religion for a very long time, right? It's an important thing to realize. Avram goes and finds a wife. She joins him. Now, Chazal are very praise Sarah and say she's a bigger prophet than he is, right? That's not the argument. But if you look, you'll see everybody keeps on marrying out and bringing them in, because the religion goes according to the father, right? Which is why you'll get to discussions on, Ethiopian Jews. Did they have proper conversions for, people that they married into? And you say they didn't need to, right? If a man takes a woman, right, and brings her into his house, she will accept his religion, as was done for the entirety of history, right? So the religion is a patriarchal religion in its essence. It switches. Now it doesn't really switch. Here's it's a problem. We go according to the mother because you know who your mother is, you don't know who your father is. There's a historical claim that it comes in the time of the Romans, right? That basically it was always very clear to everyone. You need both your parents to be Jewish. If your father is Jewish and your mother comes and joins, even if you look through what conversion used to look like and all of that, a lot of it was marriage, right? It was, you don't actually have an opinion. You don't actually bring your own religion into the house, right? It is the father's religion, period. So what is the conversion? Well, when you go to mikveh, right? Because you are accepting as you are getting married, done, right? So what ends up happening? Why did it stop going according to the father like that? About 2,000 years ago, in the time of the Romans, there are decrees. It starts even a little bit before with the Greeks, that basically every Jewish woman on her wedding night would be raped by the general. Okay? And then later on, it was also just a sheer fear of women going around and getting raped. And what ends up happening is if you go according to the father, right, then we are excommunicating all of these mothers and their children. There is no real concept of have a miscarriage, right, like have an abortion or anything like this. So there's something merciful that changes in Judaism, and I don't have a clear date or a clear message that it was said at that point. It just suddenly in halacha it starts popping up around that time, from my recollection, is that after the Romans, suddenly we're talking about Judaism according to the mother, right? And basically saying, we know that this happened. The child is Jewish as you are Jewish, because otherwise we're excommunicating the entire nation. And you had a baby after 9 months after your wedding night, go prove it was yours, right? Go prove it was, your husband's and not the Roman general. So there's suddenly a shift. Now, this is actually one of the first things that the reform sitters changed, is they changed it to have the matriarchal, prayers in everything that is mentioned. And the question is, for what purpose, right? So is it the argument for gender equality in every single thing? I don't buy it. I believe that we each have our purpose, and let's elevate women to be the best women they can be, and men to be the best men that they can be, and let's not try to put us both in the same category. It's unhealthy for everyone.
Do you bench with Sarah
No.
Public?
No.
Does the benches still
No.
work?
The Bnei Akiva does.
That's what we grew up with.
Right.
But
So
they still-
Bnei Akiva does it. I find it very funny.
But you don't do that.
It's way after what is actually considered benching from halachic perspective. I'm saying the halachic benching finishes a blessing before that.
So we just do it for
So
fun.
so the harachamans, I'm saying all the harachamans,
Just wondering.
to an extent.
Just an extra song to title
Yeah, pretty much.
together.
Well, harachamans, we'll get to that in
So you don't even
benching
need
classes.
to-
No, those are
just
they're
do
they're
the-
the most fun. Okay. When we get to we'll do classes on benching
Okay.
after this.
I just wanted to check about
We'll learn benchings, but harachamans are a much later addition. And it's not the Torah mitzvah of actually saying Birkat Hamazon. So the
But
fact
you
that
can add it in. It's
I'm
not
not.
like-
I'm not gonna say it.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
not gonna say
It's
that
not like
you
changing the
can.
Amidah.
I'm saying it's not changing the Amidah.
Yeah,
I'm saying changing the Amidah is a real problem.
yeah, that's a next.
Right. So change. So by the way, if it was in one of the other blessings that someone changed it, it would be a lot more of a problem.
Yeah.
Concern that's in the Harachamans, you'll see that the Ashkenazi and Sephardi benching follows very, very similar wording. Gets to the Harachamans, we're not saying the same thing remotely, right? Like we're on two different, right? Like we have, like 7 Harachamans, they've got 30, right? We're not saying the same things. We're not saying it's fine.
Cultural.
Well, it's not blessings anymore. It's Harachaman will, like, may the merciful one, make our life easier, right? With all of these different things. But it's not the blessings, right? So there are a lot of really nice things that are said in the Harachamans, and there should be more of them, and it's wonderful. But changing it in the Amidah would be a much bigger problem. So as far as the matriarchal, I think that there is an important thing to realize that, first of all, yes, things are read in a certain period of time. That's number one. Number two, you cannot change prayers, okay? You cannot change things that were written by groups that are wiser and more than you, okay? So the way that all halacha works is basically you have to be able to rely on an older opinion to be able to voice your opinion. You can argue with rabbis of your generation. You can't argue with rabbis not of the last generation, but of the section before you, right? So we are no longer in the period of what was referred to as the Achronim, the last ones. That ended with the state of Israel. Beforehand, there was the Rishonim, right? And you keep on going back, Sevarim, Goanim, right? Like all those periods. So the Achronim can argue within themselves. That is from 1492 until the state of Israel, right? So you have several hundred years over there. The Rishonim, right, can argue amongst themselves, but an Acharon can't come and say, I am changing something that the Rishonim instituted. Okay, that's first of all. Second of all, if there was a large Beit Din that sat down and made a ruling, a smaller Beit Din cannot change it. So when we get a Sanhedrin again, there will be several halachas that will change. Without a doubt, okay? Some of them are going to do with women, okay? Some of them are going to do with kashrut. Some of them are going to do,
Chicken and cheese.
That's not changing. Why won't that change? But that's an important thing. Why will that not change? Because it was said by the Sanhedrin. Anything that was a consensus, I was saying anything that was butter chicken.
No,
Okay?
it's like chicken palm.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, anything that was
I've always wanted to try it. Okay.
Don't worry, it's not very good. You're not
See?
missing out.
We'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll be fine. Okay, so anything that is declared by the Sanhedrin isn't going to change. Post Sanhedrin, right? There is kitniot, for example. That's going to be a discussion, right? There's going to be real rulings on things now that will most likely become a consensus, even though there's not going to be very clearly one opinion about them now. So, for example, par of milk that is coming out, full, complete milk that's par of, lab-grown meat, right? All of these things that are happening now in a time that we don't have a Beit Din that is large enough. So we do have great rabbis and we do have great Beit Dins. And there are going to be very different opinions. And you're going to see this happening as soon as this becomes more commercialized. It's going to become a political thing. It's going to be, if you're black hat, you're not doing this. If you're Chabad, you're really not doing it, right? If you're in this group, then you are going to be okay with. This was a big thing with the vegan cheese. Can you have, when it was very clear that it was vegan cheese, there was a restaurant in Yerushalayim called Crave, still is. Okay, and they were like one of the first ones to have this. You would have, ground meat and French fries, right? Like loaded potatoes, loaded fries, and cheese on top of them, right? So it looks really, really treif. However, everybody knows because there's a big hechsher when you walk in, and it says not real cheese, right? It was like very, very clear. It had a flavor that was made from yeast and was like, it was very clear to everyone that wasn't cheese. And they said, here's how we make it. So no one had any doubt. And when it started, there were groups that were willing to give it a hechsher, right? There were kosher organizations that were willing, and there were kosher organizations that weren't. They had lamb bacon, right? And it was like, oh, you couldn't get lamb bacon anywhere. And they said, well, can't call it bacon. The Rabbanut said you can have it as long as you call it fakin, right? You can't have it called something that is treif. You can't have it called a cheeseburger. You can't have it called, right? So this was a political thing for a few years. Then it became filled with Haredim that went to it, right? Because their hechsher changed, because the policies changed, because everybody saw this was clearly not cheese. And it was clearly not mar'it ayin. It was clearly not, you would end up thinking that this is not, that you're allowed to eat milk and meat together, because the signs were everywhere. And it was very clear, and it became so popular in the world, this vegan cheese, right? I'm talking about 15 years ago, right? There wasn't vegan cheese, right? And it just was starting, the market was just starting, so now it was going, oh, now you can have it, right? And that was, it also didn't really taste like cheese, right? It was like, there was a lot of these types of things. So while all of these halachas are being written over the past 2,000 years of discussions in Ashkenaz and Sfard and Northern Africa and the Middle East and everywhere, there was never someone to unify them. The second we have a Sanhedrin, it will outrule all of them, and we will start having unified halacha. That will change drastic things, right? And we're going to start seeing certain things that are going to be very, very important for Am Yisrael, right? Like one of the next big steps of the Geula, according to a lot of rabbis, is going to be a Sanhedrin, right? Is a traditional reform, right? There's going to be a mindset in the nation that shifts and says, let's understand halacha properly as a nation, right? And then we stop having multiple different options for a hechshers. You have one, because there's a standard, right, that everybody agrees on, that everybody knows. This is what ends up happening, right? And there's a lot of good that will come of it. And yes, I do actually think that certain things will change with it, and it could be things that have to do with nida. It could be things that, right, like there's a lot of things that are based off of different chumras that we took upon ourselves because of lack of knowledge. Then once there's that knowledge, some of these things change. Certain things customs that we've taken from each other, from different communities, right? So some of this is going to need to unify, and it's going to take years with the Sanhedrin to do this, but worthwhile saying, yeah.
I have a question about changing the Amidah.
Yeah.
If we're talking, for example, about Sephardic and Ashkenazi,
Yeah.
different Amidahs, because there are differences in the Amidah.
Very minor. I'm saying, I daven nusach Sfard. Okay, I daven nusach Sfard, and I was the only Ashkenazi in my high school. I went to my Rosh Yeshiva was Yemenite, and my teachers were all Adot HaMizrach. I learned how to read in everything except Ashkenazi. Okay, we have some differences, not real structural differences. Okay, so there are actual copies of what the Sidurim were. We do know more or less original text, right? And in every blessing, and we're going to get to this in a while, but we do need to finish tonight because we are over time. But when we get to Shema Kolenu, we'll see that actually in every single blessing, there is a, let's call it a spiritual hole, right? Inside the text, that you can add in your own personal prayer of something that you want to ask for in that topic, and it exists in every single blessing, right? And with that, there's the different nosachs that changed. You can't change the format. So let's go like this. Bless you, Hashem, the God of our fathers and our fathers' fathers, the God of Avram, the God of Yitzchak, the God of Yaakov, the God of Sarah, the God of Rivka, the God of Rachel, the God of Leah. What about Moshe? What about Shlomo? Was he not Herzl's God? Was it like, at what point do you say like too much is too much, right? So this one is called, the blessing itself ends with the name of the blessing, Magen Avraham, Avraham's shield, okay? And it's an understanding a little bit of the fact this repeats itself a few times, that Hashem refers as the shield, the protector of Avraham in this journey, right? In this journey that we go through, right? There's a lot of things that you should be afraid of in the world, right? Rise of anti-Semitism is a big one, right? The shield of Avraham. What am I praying with? I'm praying with the fact that I'm coming and you are my protector, right? And the wording over here, again, I'm gonna cut it. We're not gonna get into the whole thing. We'll finish. We'll start with the next blessing next time. But the words that we say is God brings us redemption. The one thing that I like is El Elyon. That word El Elyon is mentioned one time beforehand in the Torah, and it wasn't mentioned by a Jew. Who refers to God as El Elyon? It's in the beginning of the Torah. It's Melchizedek Melech Shalem. He is a non-Jewish king who blesses Avraham in the name of El Elyon. So it's another like throwback to Avraham in the way that he gets blessed as well. But the word that is used over here is Gomel Chasadim, right? God provides us with charity and kindness, and what does he do? V'koneh hakol. God buys everything. God owns everything, right? So when you have that word of v'koneh hakol, and God owns everything, right? Then we're going to use it in the most slavish kind of term. If I am your slave, you have a bare minimum responsibility for me. I'm going to ask you for the things that are a bare minimum, right? Feed me, take care of me, make sure that I'm healthy. I am your slave. So I'm coming over here as we do quite a lot with the Avinu Malkeinu approach. If you are our father and you want to talk to us as our father, or we want to talk to you as our father, right? Then remember the Avot. And if not, and we have fallen out of favor, then remember us at least as slaves and treat us with the dignity that you need to, as we are your subjects and you must take care of us. And we finish with Magen Avraham, that you are the shield of Avraham, you are the protector, and you are a protector and a redeemer. So this was the introduction, first blessing. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.